What is servant leadership? In its conventional sense, leadership is a top to down concept. The leader's vision and actions are primarily organization centric. That being said and done, can an alt leadership model exist? Bill Gates said, as we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. A radically distinguished concept was deliberated in detail in the year 1970 by Robert K. Greenleaf, which continues to inspire millions worldwide. The revolutionary notion was servant leadership. Let's understand this with an example. The supervisor of the sales team shows their team members that they are the leader of the servants by always being ready to do the work they ask their servants to do. When their team lags in reaching their sales goals, the supervisor assists the team by including the team on the sales floor and assisting them in reaching their sales goals. Servant leadership, unraveling of an apparent oxymoron. Though it had existed under recognizable forms earlier, in 1970, an essay titled The Servant as Leader put into the mainstream a question as to whether, for all practical and theoretical purposes, the role of a servant and a leader could find its place in one single person. The widely accepted traits of leadership see the leader as the commander. Leader proposes, team disposes of. Tom Peters said, organizations exist to serve, period. Leaders live to serve, period. Usually, the servant has no work-related self-agency. In business organizations, under a micromanager, modes of completing a project may also be manager-determined, besides the obvious of target setting. Given the intrinsically opposing perceptions of servant and leader, can the two ever reconcile? Yes, claims Greenleaf, stating that man is by nature a servant, and leadership being an extrinsic endowment could be divorced from him without any struggle. It could be said that the focus of servant leadership places the feeling or intuitive leader in a dominant position over the thinking leader. Servant leaders, who are they? Unlike traditional leadership forms, the servant leadership style envisages leadership as a means to serve. This service is directed towards employees, that is, team members. It is the commonality of the goal which forms teams. Is it enough, though, to strengthen them? In vast organizations, as teams get excessively complex, an employee may get a sense of losing themselves in the big picture. As the clamor to recognize fulfillment in human life increases, it is seen that one of the biggest banes of modern corporate culture is a dwindling sense of purposefulness and meaning. The servant leadership model. First you, then I. The servant leadership theory places employees at the center of the organizational leadership model. As against the me and you model of leadership, herein the approach towards employees is you, then I. This stems from the very perception of organizational structure. In servanthood model of leadership, the employee isn't merely component of entire organizational structure, rather a community-like notion of the organization itself. The employees are torchbearers and a representation of the community, which needs to be served by giving them with work environment focusing on their holistic development. Max Dupree said, "The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant." One of the primary goals of servant leadership is to help team members achieve their potential to the fullest, in turn helping businesses prosper. The servant leadership model bases itself around altruistic tendencies towards the team members. Leader, removed from the selfish grandiose of accumulating power or exercising authority, walks on the path of service to those keeping the business running, handling its function in a manner that helps employees create their path for functioning and carrying out their tasks. John C. Maxwell said, "True leadership must be for the benefit of the followers, not to enrich the leader." The servant leader carries the burden of bridging the gap between individual needs, goals, and demands of the employees and the collective employee culture on one hand, and a purposefully enriching greater benefit of the organization on the other. Checklist. Is your leadership style in line with the servant leader model? Marks of a phenomenal servant leader lie in the team's strength and efficiency. After all, the servant leader is expected to invest his skills towards improving employee standards. Fundamental principles of successful servant leadership require a leader to connect with employees in a manner that improves the employee's functioning, such that employees find a suitable mentor in the servant leader and grooming such leadership as to become one. Here's an indicative list of the most prominent features of servant leader theory. Initiative. The servant leader leads by example and doesn't shy away from individual initiatives. This includes your risk-taking abilities and innovative approach to problems. Listen well. A good servant leader makes sure he makes employees feel heard. Don't just listen to your team members. Make an effort to understand them. Cautious neglect. Be your team's leader, not the warden. Cautious neglect by the leader will give employees scope to exercise autonomy and contribute in far more creative ways, with possibly greater efficiency. Focus on flaw removal. Your team members are likely to have their share of flaws, but be accepting and inclusive towards them nonetheless. It's the flaw which must be worked upon. Accepting your team member gives you direction and them hope that their flaws, though must be addressed, can be through focused efforts removed. Perception analysis. As stated earlier, the servant leader is feeling dominant, meaning this style implores you to gain additional knowledge of perception analysis. Understand and analyze the team's requirements in an individualistic and collective manner. Foresight. It's a key tool in the armory of any leader, irrespective of leadership style. Thorough knowledge of the knowns, a prudent estimate of the unknowns must be within your line of thought to lead your team better. While feeling dominance works best for immediate situations, thought dominance is your safest bet futuristically. Persuasiveness. This innately other-centric style of leadership tests all your persuasive skills. Whether an employee needs confidence boost, or is your average Joe a typical hard nut to crack, if you choose to adopt the servant leader model without compromising on the other principles, you have to adapt the persuasion skills to meet the requirement of the hour. Patience. Servant leader style is not a race car model of leadership. It requires immense patience and perseverance. The model of servant leadership will take some nurturing before it can give you the results. But rest assured, the results are truly worth the wait in terms of increase in employees' optimal skill usage. Trust. The gamut of servant leadership success depends on the trust between the leader and the team member. As a leader, the success of your implementation of servant leadership is also intrinsically tied to your efforts to cultivate the team's trust in you and your methods. This unique model certainly has its fair share of challenges and opportunities. An impression that the leader abdicates his responsibilities under this model could not be farther away from the truth. Instead, a greater financial and moral responsibility vests in the leader. Nevertheless, business have, after years of implementation and adaptation, found this to be one of the most holistically successful and enriching modes of leadership.